I realized someone was tracking my anchor of existence on the second night, after I tied the red thread, not with their eyes, but through the instability of the anchor itself. The thread around my wrist warmed slightly, not burning, not painful, like metal left under the sun. Just enough to warn me that something was brushing against my boundary. I opened my eyes. The house was silent. My parents were asleep. The wall clock was still running, but its ticking was uneven, as if time itself were being stretched. Footsteps sounded in the courtyard, not heavy, not light, the kind of steps that did not need to touch the ground. I rose without turning on the light. Through the crack in the door, I saw a figure standing beneath the locust tree, exactly where the registrar had once stood. But this one was different, shorter, sloped shoulders, his head tilted slightly, as if unused to maintaining balance in human form. And most importantly, he had a shadow. Outside the register, not. Everything casts a shadow. The one who had died but not been erased once told me. Anything with a shadow has eaten someone else's anchor. My throat went dry. This wasn't a recorder, and it wasn't a starving thing. This was a hunter beyond the register. He didn't hunt people, he hunted anchors. His voice scraped out, hoarse and shallow, like a throat that had never learned speech. You just tied it. I didn't answer. The red thread warmed again. A young anchor. Easy to trace. He stepped forward. At that exact moment, the neighbor's dog let out a single howl and fell silent. Not dead, just shifted aside, like an object no longer prioritized by reality. I understood immediately. If he stayed here any longer, my family would be dragged toward the outside, not by attack, but by being blurred. I opened the door. My father was standing right behind me. I didn't know when he had woken. Go, he said softly. Don't let it learn this. House's anchor. I turned to him. This time I saw him more clearly than ever before, clearer than when I was still in the register. I bowed deeply. I didn't say goodbye. A farewell is a form of existence confirmation, too strong. I stepped into the courtyard. The hunter tilted his head and smiled. The smile stretched wide, but there were no teeth. Good. You know how to pull your anchor away. He turned and walked toward the dirt road leading out of the village. He didn't look back. He knew I would follow. We walked with exactly 7 steps between us, far enough that our anchors wouldn't touch, close enough that mine wouldn't be pulled off course. Once we crossed the village boundary, the air changed. Sound thinned, colors faded, as if this world were only a draft. He stopped at a crossroads with no signposts. From here, he said, you choose. Walk alone, or let me teach you. I looked at the red thread. It had cooled, but a thin filament stretched from it, trailing back toward my house. If I stayed here even a moment longer, that filament would be noticed. I made my decision. I yanked the red thread and wrapped it once more around my wrist. The pain nearly made me pass out, but the filament snapped. The hunter laughed. This time there was genuine interest in his voice. Good. You're hard enough. Walk alone. He stepped back, and his shadow dissolved into the sky like ink in water. I stood alone at the crossroads. For the first time, no register, no records, no guide, only a trembling anchor on my wrist, and a road no one had ever written down. The road ahead had no name, not because it hadn't been named, but because no one had existed long enough to call it one. I walked. Each step took a long time to receive the ground's permission. The earth responded slowly, as if deciding whether to allow my weight. Scents faded. Only a dry cold clung to my skin. Outside the register, the world wasn't continuous. Some stretches were only a few meters long, but took ages to cross. Others shifted realms in a single step. I didn't panic. I kept my breathing steady. I didn't count steps. I didn't confirm direction. I let the red thread guide my sense, not to show me the way, but to remind me that I was still me. After a while, I heard a voice, from nowhere in particular. "Don't go straight." I stopped. Ahead, the road blurred rapidly, erasing itself. One more step, and I would have entered a borderless zone, where entering and leaving meant nothing. I turned left. The ground stabilized immediately. Someone sat by the roadside, not old, not young. He was carving something into stone, each stroke slow and even. "You just came out, didn't you?" He didn't look up. I nodded, then remembered nodding meant nothing here. "Yes." He chuckled softly. "I know. Your anchor's still shaking." He set down the knife. The stone bore, meaningless marks, no words, no images, just traces. "Outside the register," he said, "no one gives directions for free. I won't lead you. I'll just tell you one rule." I listened. A nameless road only exists for those not seeking a destination. The more you want to arrive somewhere, the harder it pushes you astray. I understood. Outside the register, strong intent is a beacon. "How do I walk then?" I asked. He stood and brushed the dust from his hands. "Like someone about to die. Not hoping to arrive. Not afraid of being lost." He glanced at the red thread on my wrist. "And don't tie it tighter. The thicker the anchor, the more hunters like it." He stepped back. Not away, just no longer there. I continued. This time I didn't think, didn't miss home, didn't imagine the future, didn't picture an end. I just walked. The road resisted less, not clearer, but less hostile. I began to see other things. A bigot shadow sewing itself back together. A woman standing forever at a bend, waiting for a call that would never come. A faceless child playing hide-and-seek with its own shadow. No one asked who I was. No one remembered me. And for the first time, that didn't hurt. When the sky, if it could be called that, turned a pale gray, I stopped. The red thread no longer trembled. It was warm, stable. Not because it was safe, but because it had grown used to being unprotected. I sat by the road. Outside the register, there was no clear day or night. But I knew a phase had ended. I was no longer a villager, no longer one who was recorded. Not yet a hunter or one who had vanished. I was something in between. Someone with an anchor, but no name on any road. And I understood clearly. From now on, every step I take will create the road itself. I was called for the first time, not by humans, not by hunters, but by the road I had just walked. When I rose to leave, the ground behind me didn't close as before. My footprints remained, faint but intact. Outside the register, that was not normal. I took a few more steps, then I heard the call, not from ahead, not from behind, but from the space between my steps. "Walker, between." The voice had no emotion, no gender, like stone grinding against stone, slow and deep. I stopped. I didn't answer immediately. Outside the register, being named is a form of binding. "You have made a road," the voice continued, "but not claimed it. You have an anchor, but do not bind. You do not belong to record, and you do not belong to hunt." The ground beneath me vibrated, not an earthquake, but an adjustment. A form appeared ahead, not a being, not a person, a structure like a marker standing in the void, uncarved, only pitted as if countless things had passed it. I understood. This wasn't an entity. It was an old rule, older than the heavenly register, older than the idea of being recorded. Before there was a register, the voice said, there were walkers between. They did not keep order, and did not break it. They simply crossed places that could not connect. What must I do? I asked quietly. Silence stretched. Then the answer fell, heavy as stone, into deep water. Not must, but must not deviate. Images flooded me. Those whose names were locked by the register, those beyond the register, hunted into dissolution. Roads erased because someone tried to own them. They all shared one thing. They chose a side. The walker between, the voice continued, stands with neither. When the register grows too heavy, you lighten it. When the outside grows too hungry, you block it. Do not save too many. Do not kill in place of others. The red thread warmed, but did not tighten. For the first time since I tied it, it did not resist. In exchange, the voice lowered, you will have no home, no worship, no credit, no remembrance. When you disappear, no one will know why the world is quieter. I closed my eyes. I thought of my father, my mother, the old village road, then the black river, the hunter, the nameless hunger. I opened my eyes. I don't need to be remembered. The marker sank slightly, as if accepting. Ahead, the ground opened into a narrow passage, neither bright nor dark, but continuous. The voice spoke one last time. From now on, wherever something cannot connect, you will be drawn, not a command, a consequence. The marker dissolved. The road behind me finally closed. I stood still, not in hesitation, but in understanding. From this moment on, I was no longer fleeing. I was the walker between, belonging neither to the register nor to the outside, but to the fractures both sides refused to face. I stepped into the narrow path. I didn't know where it led, but I knew this with certainty. That place would need someone to stand between. The fracture had no fixed shape, not a crack in a wall, not a tear in space. It was like hesitation itself, a place where the world could not decide whether to continue or stop. I felt it before I saw it. The red thread cooled, not with danger, but with warped gravity. I stepped out onto blended ground, half an old village road, half the pale gray outside. They overlapped, bit into each other, but did not merge. Between them, the fracture. On one side, a middle-aged man knelt before a small altar, hands shaking as he held extinguished incense. His face was pale, sweat pouring down. On the other side, something waited. No clear form, no clear mass, only hunger. I understood immediately. The man had done something small, too small to be recorded, but enough to open a gap. He had spoken a dead person's name incorrectly, not on purpose, but outside the register. The smallest deviation is an invitation. The heavenly register began to respond. I heard pages turning, far away but clear. Not to record the man, but to seal the area. If the register sealed it, the entire village would have its memories flattened for a time. No one would die, but parts of people would be lost. If the outside reached first, I didn't need to finish the thought. I stepped into the fracture. Immediately, two forces tore at me. One tried to pull me back into the register to name, locate, and end this with a note. The other tried to drag me fully outside, to make me pray and let the fracture close itself. I chose neither. I stood between. The red thread tightened. For the first time, it wanted to snap. I spoke, not to anyone in particular. Error is not a sin. My voice didn't echo, but the fracture stalled. I turned to the man. Call again. He looked up, panicked. I can't remember his name clearly, I nodded. Then don't use a name. Use the bond. I placed my hand on the ground, not pressing, not drawing. Sigils, just confirming presence. Call him my son. The man trembled, but obeyed. The moment the words were spoken, the fracture contracted. The hungry thing hissed softly, not in anger, but in denial of a valid meal. The pages stopped turning. No new record, no seal. The fracture closed, but did not vanish. It left a scar. The man collapsed, sobbing, not from fear, but from remembering correctly. I stepped back. My legs felt heavy, not with exhaustion, but consequence. A single strand of the red thread frayed, not broken, but weakened. The old rule's voice echoed faintly. First time. You chose correctly. But fractures will remember you. I understood. From now on, any place I stood between could call me back. No ritual, no prayer. Just a deviation large enough between record and hunger. I left before the village fully stabilized, because I knew the walker between must never stay too long. To stay is to create a new anchor, and far away something had begun to remember how I interfered. Not the heavenly register, but something that had never been allowed to learn rules.